FORA.tv. The world is thinking.
There's a guy named Daryl Atkins who might or might not ring a bell for you. He's famous because he was a murderer in the state of Virginia, and his case went to the U.S. Supreme Court. And the U.S. Supreme Court, about 4 or 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, decided that you cannot execute the mentally retarded because it's unfair for a bunch of reasons. And that's what this guy's case decided. But as a result, I mean, as it's an American criminal case. It's gone to the state Supreme Court a bunch of times, up to the U.S. Supreme Court. It bounces around. He's probably had 4 or 5 different trials. And at each trial, Daryl Atkins has taken an IQ test. And so it's an interesting thing to look into. During his first one, and I think it was in 1996, he got a score of 59, which is good if you're a criminal defendant in a capital case, because the threshold for mental retardation in most jurisdictions is 70. So beneath a 70, they can't execute you. Above a 70, they can. So this really changed the way law in this area is practiced. Defense attorneys used to want to have a defendant with a high IQ. Now they want him with a low IQ, because the argument used to be, this guy's so dumb he's going to kill again by the prosecution. Now the defense is saying he's mentally retarded, you can't execute him. Anyway, over the 4 or 5 trials, his test score kept going up, much to the consternation of his defense attorneys. So it went from 59 to low 60s to upper 60s. Now they're really getting nervous. And then to most recently, it went from a 74 and then to a 76. So now he's actually not going to be executed for other reasons, but he could have been executed. It just happened a couple months ago that he can't be executed. So I'm actually going to read a few paragraphs just to close up from my book on this question of how did Daryl Atkins' IQ score go up? And it's an interesting one. So one of the reasons why I think it's a mistake to use IQ scores, IQ tests in schools is because when you're a kid, you're growing cognitively. And so your IQ scores are going to bounce all over the place. So there was a gentleman here who's worked with private schools, and private schools, elite private schools in particular, use these exams for in their admissions process. And so we're talking about kids age 3, 4, 5. And IQ scores that you get at the age of 3, trust me, they're not going to be very predictive of how you do at the age of 10, 15, whatever else. But, and this pertains to Daryl Atkins, when you get to be around the age of 15 or 16, the word is IQ scores settle. If you scored a 120, say, and you're 18 years old, it's highly likely that you're going to score around a 120 at the age of 30, the age of 40, the age of 50, etc. Unless, of course, you are in interesting circumstances. So, well, of course, the other obvious reason that his score might have gone up is anyone who's taken the SAT or these things, he's practiced it a bunch. This is sort of, practice doesn't make perfect in his case. Practice makes a 76. Which isn't particularly good, but it's not good for his situation. But there are probably other things going on. Let me read to you just a few paragraphs. How could Atkins' score have risen 17 points? Was he now no longer mentally retarded? One possibility is that Atkins had learned a lot over the past 7 years of litigation, which affected his score on what is essentially an achievement test. Much of the WACE 3 tests language, and Atkins' vocabulary had been involuntarily improved. He probably received a better education during his trials than in all his years at school combined. In 1999, for instance, a psychiatrist asked him what perjury meant, and Atkins responded with lying. He stated that oath meant a promise to tell the truth, and that when people testify, they tell their story, their side of it. Researchers estimate that children whose parents are on welfare are exposed to 1/5 the number of words at home compared to children in white-collar homes. It's unlikely, given Atkins' impoverished background, that words such as voir dire, peremptory strike, and veneer were bandied about his father's apartment, but he had been exposed to them and more in the American legal system since his arrest in 1996. All right, and just to sort of finish the loop on this, here are IQ questions that he would have gotten, or the types of them. Common knowledge, like who wrote Hamlet, arithmetic and vocabulary, picture order. In this one, they did this in World War I and just before. They would give you a bunch, 4 or 5 cards, and they would tell a story, and so you have to then reshuffle them into 1, 2, 3, 4, the proper order, and that comes straight from troops who didn't speak English and had to be processed by the army, and so he's still doing that. And digit span, that's the one where the numbers forward, the numbers backwards. So it's the same test questions that have been around for 90 years that are deciding whether or not criminal defendants live or die.